This is not a test. Stay calm in an orderly fashion. Make your way to the lifeboats.
Mayday, the ship is sinking.
So welcome back, everybody. Today is Friday, so that means we are going to be interviewing today. And today we have a very special guest. Why don't you tell us who you are?
My name is Dave Sincoxx, and I am the executive pastor for Endeavor House Ministries, and have been for going on 16 years now. Mm-hmm. I was there at the very beginning of Endeavor House, and well, not the very beginning. It was about 2 or 3 days after the first two guys got together. But
so pretty much,
yeah, pretty much since the beginning.
So what's been your experience with Endeavor House? Tell us a little bit about your history with it.
Well, my history with it started, Mike Kenoy and Okie Manning got together after an AA meeting, and Okie was giving Mike a ride home, and the two of them shared a common vision for a Christ-centered recovery facility. Probably at that point, their main objective was to establish a house for men. And they decided that between the two of them and their combined history in recovery, that they maybe had some foundational truths that they could share with people. And so they decided to go for it, to try and put together the things that were needed to establish such a house. And Okie, I was the associate pastor at Olivet Baptist Church at the time, and Okie was one of our parishioners. He actually approached Pastor Ed Owens first, and Ed just didn't feel like he had the time to spend on such an endeavor, no pun intended. And so Okie, he kind of handed Okie off to me, and Okie approached me about being on the board of directors, and I didn't have a clue about what I was getting into, but I agreed to help out in whatever way I could. And so I was the first board member.
Okay.
Besides the two founders, and we were off to the races from then. We put together a board of directors that was largely composed of people that were involved in Celebrate Recovery, mm-hmm. and other individuals that the two of them knew from the recovery community. And I wish I could just spout off the top of my head who all the board members were at the very beginning, but years have passed and I've slept since then. So
it just proves that you've been around for a long time.
Right.
The Endeavor House has been around for a long time. Let me phrase that.
Yeah. So we formed a board. We kind of pulled some things together, and really through interactions with people mostly, we were able to find a house that we had our first resident, a lady just had a house, and she was in the middle of rehabbing the larger portion of the house, but she had a small apartment on the back end of it was almost like a lean-to on the back of the house, and she made that available to us. And after we established the board and some rules and things like that, we had our very first resident move in there. There was no supervision or anything like that, other than daily contact with the guy, and we were encouraging him to get involved in AA, NA meetings, things like that, and to be involved in church. We were kind of creating the program as we went, and and mostly that was Mike and Oki at the start of the thing. I was still in full-time ministry, and so my involvement was somewhat limited. I chaired the board meetings and pitched in wherever I could along the way. But that's how things got started. And then several months later, the lady decided that that's not the way she wanted to go with the house.
Mhm.
And so we were in a position where we needed to look for something else. There was a guy in town. His first name was Jim, and he actually owned quite a number of rental properties in town. And he was in the process of liquidating some of those properties in order to finance a mission trip to Japan.
Okay.
And so we approached him about the possibility of buying one of his houses on land contract. And that's when we really established the very first real Endeavor house.
And that was on Pine Street, correct?
On Pine Street,
Yeah.
yeah. On North Pine Street, just about a block and a half south of the QD store
Mhm.
on Pine Street in
Saginaw.
Saginaw.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was driving with Mike one time. So for the listeners who don't know, I went through Endeavor House myself. I've talked about it quite a bit,
Yeah.
but I was driving with Mike to go pick up another resident.
You looked familiar.
Yeah, I know. I thought I mentioned before too. But yeah, so I was picking up a member from that City Rescue Mission kitchen that's down there.
Yeah.
And he made me drive around, like go down the one way, come back around so I could see Pine Street and be able to check that out. So it was pretty interesting being able to see that, like the steps that you guys took. It was really intriguing to me, but
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, continue.
Well, that was a 4-bedroom house, and we had visions of being able to fill that thing up with about 8 guys with bunk beds in each of the 4 bedrooms, and we ran into a zoning issue. And so we went through the rigmarole of doing zoning meetings, and you have to send out letters to all the area residents, and anybody that wants to can come to the meeting and weigh in on whether or not they want, a recovery-oriented house in their neighborhood. And it turned out that we did have several people that showed up that were not in favor of allowing us to have more than 4 in the building. So the building remained zoned for 4 people, largely because of parking issues. But that's how we started. And I think that the Lord was really in it, because it was a good situation. People were able to come in, get a lot of attention, and be able to establish a pretty tight-knit relationship with each other while they were in the house. And it was a more manageable number of people for us. And I think that there was real wisdom there that we weren't really aware of that early in the process. So
Absolutely.
And that worked out well. And we were, I think we were in that house for about 7 years before anything else became available. So.
Yeah, and then you guys moved over. Was there a Cedar Street house, if I remember correctly?
There was, yeah. The City Rescue Mission had a transitional house that they were running for guys that were coming out of their recovery program.
Mm-hmm.
And they, that was on that, there's a small peninsula of 4 houses in a row that are just south of the Wendy's store on where Cedar Street and Larch Street separate, going north and south. And this house was in that little peninsula, and it was the second one from the Wendy's store. And the rescue mission had heard about our ministry, and they had decided that they wanted to get out of that business and focus more exclusively on their stated purpose to feed and clothe the hungry and homeless. And so they approached us about taking over the running of that house. And when we were talking to them, we just The only reservation we had is that we wanted to be sure that we were going to be able to run our own program instead of theirs. And they were open to that. They had heard about us and had some respect for the things that we did. So that began a really, really nice relationship with them. And they had a man named Rich Gray who had been running that house, and he actually became one of our board members for a time. And
cool.
That was extremely helpful to us because he already knew how things worked well in that house and was familiar with the facility and some of the guys that were kind of grandfathered into the program.
Yeah.
As well. So.
And then we moved to the current location, correct? So they're over there on South Waverly Road.
The house on Cedar Street was owned by Women's Opportunity House, as were all of the four houses, and Nancy Parker, the leader of that ministry, was kind of a mama bird, and ushered us out of the nest because they wanted to turn that entire peninsula into women's ministry. Yeah. Which they did. And she was very gracious to us and actually helped spot our current Endeavor House at 3830 South Waverly, and was willing to invest seed money to help us with a down payment. She advocated for us with her bank and helped us to get the mortgage lined up. And it was a gentle nudge out of the nest, and we really appreciate her very much and everything that they have done for our ministry. It's been a great partnership over the years. So Nancy's been one of our angels, and she is still going strong at 90 plus years.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you went from housing one person, one resident. Was it a 2-bedroom apartment or a one?
One.
Okay, so a 1-bedroom apartment being able to house one person, and now Endeavor House holds 16 residents, correct?
17 with the
house manager.
House manager.
Yeah. So 1 to 17 through 4 different properties. What was that like for you, experiencing that transition and that growth of the program that you were helping really just jumpstart? You were helping it from the get-go.
There's a lot of things about it that we didn't know to begin with. Mike and Oki had some recovery history under their belts, mostly Oki. Mike was fairly young in his recovery at the time. Actually Oki and some of the guys that were first residents at the Pine Street house really sat down and helped put together a lot of the program that still exists to this day. Very much based on, I guess you'd say, a Christ-centered 12-step approach.
Yeah.
With the understanding that the 12 steps, the traditional 12 steps, are very much biblically based principles, and so without apology, we just declared Jesus Christ to be the higher power that we were going to be talking about at Endeavor House, and began to do programming based on the 12 steps and on really just principles of life and how to manage your time, how to pay bills on time, how to cook and clean and do laundry, and just whatever people needed. There was a lot of life management skills that got exchanged, and a lot of recovery, the information that got exchanged. And then the constant day-to-day discipline and accountability of having somebody looking over your shoulder the whole time. Yeah. It's there's no substitute for that.
Absolutely. So there's a few things that I know about Endeavor House. Obviously, since I participated in the program, there's a few things that stood out to me.
You probably know some things about Endeavor House that I don't know.
Probably, like that secret hiding space in the basement, right? Where we take naps at during the day. So there was a lot of things there that I didn't know were unique at the time to that place, because this is my first sober living house. It's the first time I really went into sobriety. But like since working in this field, I've seen a lot of other sober living programs that do not operate the same way. One is the level of accountability and structure inside of that program is rigorous isn't the word I want to use because it almost implies bad, but just very, very structured, very high levels of accountability and just a lot of stuff you need to do, but it's all stuff that's very applicable, especially in that first 2 months, which I really enjoyed because before I started working, there was no excuse why I couldn't do all that stuff. It's like it was preparing me to go to a job for 8 hours a day and then go and do recovery stuff like what I do today. And then the mentorship program. That was really interesting to me as well. Not only was there a sponsorship that is required for being there, a 12-step sponsor of some sort, and then you guys have a mentorship program there. So tell us a little bit about that mentorship. I want to expound on that a little bit.
Well, first of all the accountability factor it's all about the love. Mm-hmm. It really is. And accountability is not so burdensome when you realize that it's coming from a place of love.
Right.
And guys have responded to that well over the years. No, people don't generally like to be corrected. and I'm one of them. I'm not fond of somebody telling me I'm doing something wrong or that I ought to change my behavior. But the fact is I ought to change my behavior quite a bit of the time. And if I didn't have somebody that was willing to share that with me in a loving and compassionate way and in a practical way that really helped the process, then a lot of my behaviors would have continued and I'd still be stuck in them. So that's been a great thing. What was the second half of that question?
Structure was one of them. So the structure of it.
So yeah, the structure of Endeavor House and the way that it works, we have probably our one of our most important things is what we affectionately call the point sheet, or it's an accountability sheet. Mm-hmm. And everybody gets one of those on day one when they come into the program. And it's pretty much has the entire schedule laid out. There are activities throughout the week. Everybody's required when they first come into the program to attend a minimum of 5 AA or NA meetings per week. There are also quite a number of Christ-centered activities. There's a Bible study on Tuesday morning, and this schedule can change depending on what's going on and the availability of these things. But right now there's a Bible study on Tuesday morning, another church midweek prayer meeting on Wednesday night. Thursday night is Celebrate Recovery. Friday night is Steps to Freedom. Both Celebrate Recovery and Steps to Freedom are at local churches.
Can't forget about the Friday morning Bible study led by yours truly.
There is some Yahoo teaching them on Friday morning. Yes, right. That's right. Yeah. And that's just a real a great time together. We get together and spend a little bit of time waking up together because right now we're starting at 7:00 in the morning. Oh, and so I get up before breakfast to get there, and the guys come out a little cloudy when they first get there. So we do a little bit of praise and worship at the beginning and helps wake everybody up and puts our hearts in the right frame of mind. If you can, put a heart in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and so we have a lot of exposure to the Bible, and really what our primary emphasis there is to develop a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Right.
That relationship is what helps them walk through the program while they're in the program. But it's also the thing that the greatest thing that they take with them when they leave the program. If that relationship is vital and active and healthy, then their chances of staying sober outside of this accountability program are greatly increased. Another thing that happens with that is that with the point sheet or the accountability sheet, one of the things I really encourage guys to do is to try to replicate that when they leave the program.
Absolutely.
Take the thing with you, continue to do those activities throughout your life. You might dial back a little bit on the frequency of some of those things because you've got other things to do in life now. You have to make a living, you have to maintain your house and all of those kinds of things, but keeping plugged into the AA or NA meetings, keeping plugged into church involvement, being in relationship with the Lord, being able to find a sponsor and a mentor, being able to do all of those things are huge in terms of maintaining sobriety. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I talk to my clients a lot about this as well. Like when we're seeing in a sober living atmosphere, there's going to be a somewhat of a buckshot method. So a lot of things are going to be thrown at you to see what works. So my encouragement is always find those things that work, go through this list, find the things that work, write a list of the things that you have to do to stay sober, and then do those things every single week.
Yeah.
Because the moment we at least for me, when I got out of Endeavor House, I had this period where I didn't have to go to meetings for a while. You know, I'd keep going to meetings and I'd keep doing that. But then I wasn't forced anymore. So I decided that I didn't need to go to as many meetings. I was going to go to like one here, one there, go to church every once in a while, go to a Bible study, you know, try to do some of the right things. And I found myself sliding backwards in my recovery. And I feel like it's really easy to do when the force is taken off. So now it's up to you. The accountability is placed on yourself. So I'm really glad that I was able to snap out of that and had people in my life that were like, hey, that's not a good idea. So I was able to pull back, but that's always my encouragement is figure out what you're going to do because it's really easy to justify. I mean, when I see those little things slip like, oh, it's just one meeting, you know, or I'm just missing this, I'm just missing that. It's not that big of a deal. You know, I'm doing well. But if I have a list of saying I need to do these things in order to stay sober and I don't do that, then it's a little bit harder to justify. So
you just reminded me of a poem that I was exposed to, and this isn't the whole thing, but part of it said, "I am wounded now and sore, but it's not from waging war. I was injured on vacation with the enemy." And sometimes I think when you're in a heavy accountability structure, you want to take a little vacation. And that's not necessarily a bad thing,
right?
But it sure can turn into a bad thing if the vacation is a vacation from the disciplines and a vacation from the things that are really holding your life together.
Right. Absolutely.
We can't afford that.
It doesn't take very long for it to all fall apart. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about was the mentorship, or not talk to you about in general, but about the Endeavor House is the mentorship program.
Yeah.
So.
Well, one of the things that we feel is very important is to be able to have somebody that's a little farther along in their faith, to be able to meet with our guys. We encourage our mentors to meet with the guys once a week at least. And the onus is placed on the mentee, on the participant in our program, to reach out to the mentor, to kind of like with AA or NA sponsorship, that you need to call your sponsor. Well, you also need to call your mentor,
right.
And make yourself available and check on their availability. But what we ask the mentors do is just to kind of shepherd that person along in their spiritual growth. And that can take a lot of different forms. It's two individuals, and the individuals have varying personalities. And so some things work for one pair and other things work for a different pair. So there's not a real specific or rigorous schedule that they have to keep, but most of the guys do have some sort of a structured Bible study or a book that they're walking through together, or some sort of a discussion type of thing that they're walking through. On the back side of the point sheet, there's a goals list, And that's another thing that we encourage the mentors to do, is to walk through some of the goals. It's called SMART goals, and SMART stands for, each one of those stands for a different element in the goal structure. And it helps people to be intentional about laying down the things that they're going to be doing for the next week of their lives. And then to have the accountability of somebody asking them if they did those things along the way. And if they didn't, why not? And how can I help you to continue with that? And also to just help them to develop that all important relationship with Christ, the all important disciplines of prayer and Bible reading and those kinds of things as well. That's what keeps the relationship popping, and that's what keeps you alive.
Absolutely. So I find it, the reason I wanted to bring up the mentorship is the co-host. So the people you guys listen to when it's not me is Christian. And Christian was my mentor through the Endeavor House program. Now he's my manager. He's my best friend. I mean, he's a pastor. So we talk a lot about scripture. We, sometimes we do Bible studies together every once in a while. We're both pretty busy, so we don't get together that often on that, but we spend a lot of time together and talk about kind of the deeper things of Christianity. He taught me like boundaries. Mm-hmm. He taught me a lot of things. As being a peer recovery coach and a pastor, he had a lot on the both sides. So it was very beneficial for my recovery, and led me to where I am today. So, and I've never seen that mentorship program inside of a different sober living house. So I thought it was just a really cool, unique element of Endeavor House. So
I couldn't help noticing that he's not mentored anybody else since.
I know, I was special. Yeah, no. But yeah, so tell us a little bit about your experiences with the recovery field. So what's it been like? What have you seen? What have you heard? What have you smelled?
I mentioned earlier that I didn't have a clue when we started. Mm-hmm. As a pastor, I'd done just a few counseling sessions with mostly with one guy who was an alcoholic, and he was in and out of treatment centers and transitional places during the time that I knew him for about 3 years. And he was a nice guy. We enjoyed talking together and stuff like that. But I would have varying pockets of contact with him when he was sober, or if he was in a treatment center, I could go and see him there, and we'd spend a little time talking. But that was really about the extent of my experience. When I was growing up, I had done some irresponsible drinking and smoked some weed and things like that. But my personal experience with those things was that irresponsible as I was, sometimes nothing ever really grabbed a hold of me and became an obsession or a compulsion. And so I'm in I guess maybe a little bit different category than a lot of the people that are as heavily involved in the recovery community as I am.
Right.
Because that's not been a part of my journey. And yet, having said that, one of the things that Oki Manning insisted on when we first started Endeavor House is that everybody on the board of directors should go through a step study. Mm-hmm. And he suggested this Celebrate Recovery step study. And so I began to attend a step study. It was really well run, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And I discovered after being there about 3 sessions or so, well, even in the first session, I realized that at least half of the people that were in that step study, I think there were 12 of us, about half of us were non-addicts. There were several of us that were there. I declared myself to be a sin addict. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly the way it worked for me, because I didn't have a specific substance that got a hold of me, but sin had gotten a hold of me early in life, and I was struggling with that my entire existence. And came to find out that those 12 steps that we were working through, or in the case of Celebrate Recovery, those 8 principles that we were working our way through, had full application to virtually every area of my life. And so before I got involved with Endeavor House, a lot of my perspective about the recovery community was very, filled with compassion and stuff, but it was compassion for those people over there who do those things. And third session into the step study, I realized that I'm in that category as well, that I'm in a situation where I need to have Jesus Christ as my higher power to help me through the various storms of life, the things that draw me and hook me back into sinful activities, the things that keep me doing bad habits and repeated behaviors and all of those kinds of things. Those steps have been very helpful to me personally. And so even though I've not been a substance abuser and I don't have the classic symptoms of SUD, I do have a lot of personal connection with some very similar things in my own life. So
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a really amazing story. I've always said during meetings, I haven't always said, but I've shared a few times that we're kind of blessed to be able to go to these meetings and work these steps because they are applicable to everybody. Yeah. I mean, it's what you apply them to, what it comes down to. It's like, for me, it was easy because my life was very unmanageable and was very, I was very powerless over substances. I was very powerless over my drug of choice. That's where my life was centered around. So that was easy for me to find that thing. But once I found that, working those steps or letting those be practices that I walk out on a daily basis has really freed me. And like being able to sit down and talk about that type of stuff is just, it's so beneficial. Being able to talk about problems, talk about my day, talk about what I'm going through, and then have a group of 15 dudes who are like, hey, you know what? Maybe you should try this. Because when I was going through that, this is what I tried. And like, normal people don't have that ability of that connection. It's just, I feel like it's a blessing that we get in the recovery field. So
I don't know anybody on earth that wouldn't benefit from being able to have that kind of a situation. And churches have it's not exclusive to the recovery community. Mm-hmm. Churches have been about establishing small groups and discipleship groups and things like that for years. And that's what that's about. And in fact, the conclusion that I came to when I was doing the step study is that this is discipleship. That's Absolutely. Plain and simple. It's discipleship.
Yeah. So on that note, when we're talking about the discipleship of a step study or the 12 steps, you talked about how they very much were centered. They were brought out of a Christian group. They were brought out of the Oxford group originally. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, how do you feel like recovery and Christianity interact together?
Well, it's, recovery is like any form of, and not to stigmatize it, but any form of sin or knots on the top of your head from behaviors that weren't good for you. Mm-hmm. Anything like that is what Jesus came to fix.
Right.
And sin has entered the world, and sin has become a part of the culture of planet Earth. And because sin is in the world, there are diseases and just all kinds of dark things that go on in the world. And SUDs are part of that entire package. It's not that the SUD people are that much different than the rest of mankind. It's that we all are broken people who are looking for a way back to the original design. God laid it out in the beginning for us to be sinless and be able to walk in close fellowship with Him, and that got broken when Adam and Eve decided to believe the lie that Satan told them. They had been told that if they ate of the forbidden fruit, they would die. And Satan said, "You're not going to die. In fact, God knows that if you eat of this fruit, you're going to be like Him. You're going to be wise, and you'll understand the difference between right and wrong." And there was a lot of truth to that statement, but the whole thing was an attempted indictment of God, where He was painting the image of God to be a negative thing in the lives of human beings. And so what we have been hoodwinked into doing our entire lives is going after things that we somehow think are going to make us look good or better or more attractive, or having accomplished more and make ourselves look good in other people's eyes, when the whole time our goal should have been to look good in God's eyes. Well, if we can reestablish that relationship, and that's really what Jesus came to do when He died on the cross, He eliminated the forced separation that took place when mankind sinned. And because that forced separation has now been done away with by the blood of Jesus Christ on the cross, then our access to the Father has been restored. And we now can be in His presence anytime at a moment's notice. And that obviously centers on recovery, but it also centers on anything else that's going on in a person's life. It's in the middle of every sin, every mistake, every shortcoming that anybody might have, but it's also in the middle of every joy and every celebration. And God really wants to be a part of our lives and to be involved in every part of our lives. And that's where, to me, the point of contact is with the recovery community and with every human being. God wants to be a part of our lives. He wants us to be restored to that relationship with Him. That's why He made us. The Westminster Catechism says, what is the chief end of man? To love God and enjoy Him forever. That's our goal. And stuff gets in the way of that. And it's so sad that stuff gets in the way of that. And it's so glorious that Jesus has come to fix that.
Absolutely. Over here getting an old-fashioned Endeavor House Bible study right now. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's really, I don't know. I feel like that's really, really wisely put, I guess, to apply to addiction and just problems in life as well. I mean, it kind of takes it out of the sphere of just substances that way. Mm-hmm. It's like, whatever it is, you're finding something. I feel like everybody has their thing. I don't know, either hurt, habit, hang up, as CR calls it.
Yeah.
We all have something that we want to fill that hole with. And I know for me, in my recovery, I was trying to fill a hole. It was like, there was something missing. I don't know what that was. It was acceptance. There was love missing. There's a lot of things there. And I was using that substance to fill that hole. And I know the only thing that I found that really made me feel complete was when I embraced my faith. Yeah. So with that being said, what's been the difference you've noticed in people who have done that, embrace the faith, versus people who have not wanted to get in the idea of the spirituality part of recovery?
Well, I think the ones who embrace the faith are the ones who they kind of think through I think every one of us looks at what our circumstances are. And we all make excuses for ourselves and things like that. And pretty much every one of us wants to believe that on some level, our set of circumstances combines to justify any behavior that we might have taken part in, and so we want to see ourselves as different. We want to see ourselves as special, and yet at the same time we're conflicted because we also want to see ourselves as the same as everybody else, and we want to fit in and be a part of society and stuff. So, and one of the things that I think that really helps make the connection with the Lord is just the need for transparency and being able to recognize, okay, this is who I really am, and God is someone that I can be entirely real with, and have acceptance and love and hope and all of the things that we human beings are just continually striving for in every different area of our lives. And those are things that God holds out to us and says, this is what I'm offering you. Come to me, those of you who are laboring and are heavy laden, and I'm going to give you rest. Cast your cares on me because I care for you. All of those things are things that God really wants you to know about, and God really wants you to be able to be like that prodigal son who came home and realizing how badly he had fallen, and yet he saw the dad waiting for him at the end of the driveway, and instead of being judged and condemned and sent back away, he was welcomed back and reinstated into the family, and got a ring on his finger and a robe on his back, and celebration and all of those things. And I'm that guy. I needed to come back to the Lord, and so do we all. And
Absolutely. So what's it been like for you, being a spiritual, kind of giving spiritual guidance to people that are in such a large transition in their life? What is that? Would you say it's kind of walking carefully? Would you say it's more like the people are more embracive? Would you say it's rewarding? Would you say it's, I mean, I don't want to say burdensome, but burdensome? What are your experiences with that? What's it like for you?
It's boy, I haven't really thought about it in these terms. In some ways, it's kind of like low-hanging fruit with a very tough skin. And by low-hanging fruit, I mean that people in recovery are in recovery because they've realized that some changes need to be made. And so there's already a level of openness there that recognizes the need for some help to come from some direction. They might argue with you a lot about where the help should come from, or what form it should take, and all that sort of stuff. But people in recovery recognize their need for help. And then when I say very tough skin, a lot of people in recovery have been wrestling with the difficulties for a long time, and have tried a whole bunch of different approaches, and have not found themselves to be successful in a lot of those different areas. And so there's a little skepticism there as well in a lot of people. And so the thing that seems to be the most effective, though, is love. Being able to love on people and continually love on people. And there's all kinds of the major cliche is tough love and all that sort of stuff. And yes, love does need to be tough sometimes, but love also has to be tender, and a good mix of those two things is, and everything in between, is, I think, extremely helpful. And again, it all, in my mind, it just harkens right back to the model that Jesus presented us. God loved the world so much that he gave his only son so that whoever believed in him wouldn't perish, but would have everlasting life. And God didn't send Jesus into the world to condemn the world, but that the world would be saved through him.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know. So on the love note, we're gonna talk about Angie's house here in a minute as well. But on the love note, when I first came in there, the low hanging fruit was very true for me. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea how to do this. So please show me how to do this. But I was also very resistant, at the same time. Like I wanted to change, but I didn't want to change. I wanted like the change to just happen without me putting in the effort. But that love, at first I was very skeptical of it. It's like when I first came in, it was hard for me to believe that someone who didn't know me, like Mike Kenoy, I walked in. Why is Mike Kenoy giving me a hug right now? I don't know this guy. But it was very skeptical at first, but like the longer I went in, I couldn't poke holes in it. I couldn't they're just loving me for my money, but rent's really cheap here and they don't really make that much. Whatever it might be. It was like I had a theory and I couldn't poke holes in it. So I had to finally embrace like these people really just care about me and want to see me do good. And I feel like when I embraced that, I was able to take those like, hey Hunter, it's 3:30, you're supposed to be up at 3. Why are you still laying in bed? I was able to take those conversations a bit more to heart and like embrace that. The reason they're talking to me about this isn't because it somehow affects their day that I'm sleeping past 3, because they just can't get past that. It's that they don't want to see me fail in life. And it really, it springboarded my recovery. It gave me a lot of motivation, a lot of hope, a lot of just knowing that people cared about me. I feel like you guys still show me a lot of love when I come around there. So it's an interesting experience that I got out of that program there. So
yeah. I know your boss, and he's not going to let you sleep past 3.
Yeah, no, he doesn't like it. I told him he's going to have to instill a mandated nap time from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. every day. Just so we're clear.
Go for it, huh?
No, he wasn't biting me. He said he'd come in there with an air horn every time at 1 o'clock. So anyways, so on the note of Angie's house, what is Angie's house?
Well, we've been doing Endeavor House for Men for 16 years now. And we've learned a lot along the way, and we've grown a lot. We've bumped our heads a lot, but that's been part of the learning process. And one of the things that we've discovered and heard about in the recovery community is that there is a real need for a similar kind of program for women. And that's what Angie's House is about. It's going to be called Angie's House because it's named after a young lady named Angie Martin, who lost her life to her an accidental opioid overdose, and her family was devastated. Her dad was devastated. But her dad was not the kind of guy to crawl in a hole and just mourn. He got angry and then he got busy. And he began to raise money and has actually for several years now put on fundraisers that the proceeds of which have gone to a variety of recovery-oriented agencies and ministries, and Endeavor House itself has benefited from some of his fundraisers in the past. And when we started talking about doing a house for women, he was all over that. He was really excited about the possibility of seeing the needs of women met. And it was kind of one of those what if questions. What if Angie had that opportunity in her life? She might still be alive today. And he really wanted that for other ladies that are struggling with their addictions. And so he approached us, and like I said, he's shared a lot of his story with us. he shared money with us that he's raised in the various fundraisers, and we just felt like he was a guy whose heart was like ours. And so as we began to develop the plans, it just seemed like a really great transition for us to name the new house after Angie. You probably remember from your time at Endeavor House that the pantry in Endeavor House is called Angie's Pantry.
Yep.
And that's also named after Angie. And great family. They're from over close to Detroit. And sorry, the name of the town escapes me right now, but Dave Martin is a great guy that is really interested in seeing this happen in the Lansing area. And so what Angie's House is a home, a transitional, transformational house for women. It is not open yet, but we have been working over the past year or so with the view of opening, projected to be sometime this summer. It really is depending on the availability of the facility. We do have a facility all picked out, and arrangements are made for us to be able to have that facility. But the people that are in there right now are waiting on the availability of another facility. So we're waiting for some of the chess pieces to move around before we can do that. But that has given us some wonderful time to be able to assemble staff, to begin to do some grant writing and fundraising and things like that. And so we are in position to really hit the ground running when the house becomes available. We should be able to get it up and running within, with maybe a little bit of fixing in the house itself, get it up and running within a month or two.
Go through some more zoning issues, things like that.
Well, it's interestingly enough, the house is already appropriately zoned because they're running a home for homeless kids in there right now. So
awesome.
It's already zoned. It's already, it's got all of the accoutrements that we need, including video cameras and all kinds of luxury items that we don't have at the men's house.
Well, good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I don't know how I would have felt about video cameras at the men's house. You guys would have caught me all those times I didn't put my dishes away or something,
That's exactly the idea of it.
Well, that is awesome. So you kind of already answered my second question, which was what led you guys to do that. And it sounds like with the, it was mostly that poll that you heard in the community that there was a need for a Christ-based 1 year, I mean, long-term, one way or another, sober living house for women.
Right. And we haven't totally settled the issue yet. It may very well be longer than 1 year for the women. Some people who've had some history in dealing with women have advised us that, and these were women who advised us to go ahead and make it longer. So that's something that we've thought about, and but it's definitely a need. We've gotten a lot of phone calls over the years from people who are looking for such a place for women, and they call Endeavor House not realizing that it was exclusively for men. So, and we've been able to refer them on to Women's Recovery or
Women's
Opportunity House, or some other places that we're aware of. But it'd be really nice to just say, why don't you come into our program? This is what we do, and here's where we are, and here's how you can do that. So
that's awesome. So say somebody did want to get involved with your program. So Endeavor House being open right now, or Angie's House when it does come about, what are some ways that people can get involved with that program? More on the actually entering the program for themselves or for a loved one.
Well, like I said, there's probably going to be a little time between today and whenever this goes up on the website, but sometime probably midsummer or maybe a little later than that, the house will be up and running, we hope. And probably the best approach to that would be to call Mike Kenoy, and his number is 517-285-1270. Or they can call me, Dave Sincoxx, at 517-230-0348. And we will either do some intake discussion with that person over the phone. Mostly, though, we'll just want to get to know them a little bit, find out what they've been through, what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish, and see if it's a good fit for what we've got in place, and if we're a good fit for them. And then mostly what we're looking for is somebody that is really willing to make a change and really wants that to happen in their lives, and is willing to do what it takes to do that.
Awesome. And then what opportunities does your ministry offer for people who want to volunteer either, time, whether it be time, money, knowledge, and experience of the recovery or whatever it might be? How could somebody go about giving some volunteer time to you?
Same phone numbers. 517-285-1270 is Mike's number, and 517-230-0348 is my number. And just depending on what you're interested in doing, we can kind of direct the flow of where you're going and who else needs to be talked to about how that can happen. But we're in need of just a wide variety of things. Sometimes we have a need for people just to drive people around.
Right.
One of the commitments that we have is to get people to appointments and recovery meetings and various program activities. And sometimes we've got a shortage of in-house drivers. So it's very helpful if somebody's able to come along and haul people around a little bit. But that's kind of on the lower commitment end of the scale. But we also need mature Christians who are willing and able to do mentoring with our residents, and lots of things in between. People have come over and helped to do various things around the house, little fix-up things. If there's a crack mechanic that's willing to donate some time from time to time, there's almost always something that needs to be fixed.
Right.
And we can really benefit greatly from that. And I think the Lord really honors it when people are willing to give their time to Him in that way.
Absolutely. So with that being said, man, we're at the end of the podcast time. It was great talking to you and learning even more about the mechanics of the program than what I already knew. So
yeah, this wasn't near the sweatshop I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, no, there's no like swinging light, going back and forth. But with that being said, have yourself a great day.
Thank you too.
All right.